Hi everyone, welcome to the first of the Pioneer Practice series. Thanks ever so much for giving up your time on a dark January evening to join us. We've got 4 sessions. Tonight's the first one and the theme is Be You, which we'll get into a bit later on. Basically the idea of this series is to sort of distill all the practical wisdom we've learned at CMS over a decade or so of training pioneers. I and others have written and published various things on, I suppose, more the theology and missiology of pioneering, but I wanted to do something that was just a bit more practically focused and had no academic references and so on. So tonight's kind of summarising the theme from that book Pioneer Practice that I did. It'll be an informal chat show format. I hope it's interactive. I'm glad to see the chat starting to buzz. Do talk to each other, get involved via the chat, and we'll have some polls and so on. A couple of practical things. One is, as well as the chat, because so much stuff is likely to whiz down the chat, it's very difficult to keep an eye on questions that come that way. So there is a separate button that says Q&A at the bottom of your screen. So if you've got a particular question for myself or the guests, then do use the Q&A button. And then second practical thing is there is a button at the bottom of your screen that says live transcript. So if you want subtitles, then if you click on that button, you'll see the subtitles. If they're running and you don't want to see them, then click on that to turn that off. Every week I've got 3 or 4 guests, so looking forward to tonight, the 3 people I'll introduce to you in a little bit. In terms of time, just so you know where we're headed, I'm aiming to be 1 hour and 10 minutes. I tried last year when I did a webinar series to fit it in 1 hour and found it difficult with 3 guests. So hopefully we'll finish in 1 hour and 10 minutes, so 9:10. So hopefully you can hang in for that. And if you signed up for the series, we'll be sending you an email after each one, and that will have a link in it to the video, the recording of the evening. So if you miss one, you'll be able to catch up that way. This is a partnership between Church Mission Society and Heartedge. So I'd like to just introduce Catherine, who's with us this evening, and she's going to be fielding the chat and Q&A, just to say hi and tell us what Heartedge is. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, hello. Lovely to be with you all this evening, and thanks again for being here. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, also I'm part of the Heartedge development team. For those of you who don't know Heartedge, it's an ecumenical and international movement which basically renewing the church within the church. So it was initiated by St. Martin in the Fields in 2017, and since then it's grown to become an international network, and it's basically supporting churches who are rethinking and reimagining themselves and their sort of position in society, and particularly focusing around what we call the 4 C's of congregational life, compassion, commerce, and culture. So basically, as a network, it's about connecting people sharing their insights, their learning through consultancy and development. So that's the way we work. The ethos of Heartedge is it's very much about innovation and experimentation and kind of seeing what God's doing outside the church. So that kind of really ties in very well with the pioneer ethos and wanting to encourage those who have the pioneer gift. So we're really delighted to be partnering with CMS and with Jonny on this tonight. So we welcome you all very much. You can obviously find out more about Heartedge on the website, on our website, and we'll be sending out more details in an email afterwards. So it's open for people and churches to join. So really looking forward to being with you this evening and the subsequent weeks. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. And the mix of guests we have, some all are pioneering in some way or another, but some are connected with CMS, some with Heartedge, some with both. If you're social media tweeting or anything, then do use the hashtag Pioneer Practice, which I don't think is used for a lot. So that's probably a good hashtag to use for the evening. So we'll kick off with a few polls just to get us warmed up. I don't know if we can get those going, Martin. The first poll is why are you here? Are you here because you want to start something? You have started something. You want to help others to start something. You want something to do in January, or you want to find out about the enemy. So yeah, tick on one of those and we will see why you're here. How are we doing, Martin? How do I see the results, or do you have to show?
I'll share them in a minute. 171 people participated so far.
Okay, great. Well, let's have a look at that then. Okay, so that's great. A lot of people want to start something. I mean, I really hope this series will help you in that. And if you have started something, I think there'll be loads for you. And if you want to help others, that's great. Okay, well, it's good to know that there are people keeping an eye on us. 8 want to find out about the enemy. So you're very welcome to find out. And yeah, I think January is a good time for these kind of things. The second poll is, are you a pioneer? Yes or no? I mean, it doesn't matter whether you are or not, but would you describe yourself as a pioneer? Yes or no? I mean, it's a complicated word, I think, the word pioneer. Some people love it, some people hate it. I've grown to like it, I must admit, but not everyone loves it. Are you a pioneer? Yes or no? Okay. A very polarized question, says Phil Simpson. Yes, it is. Well, you can find a third way. So loads of you are. So that's great. You're welcome. Lots of 22% not. So that's good to know. Everybody's welcome. And then the next question is, are you pioneering? Are you pioneering? Because I talk to quite a lot of people who are less comfortable with the word pioneer, but they like the idea of being pioneering. So that's the next one. Are you pioneering? Yes or no? Yeah, and I'm afraid this is also a polarized question. Sorry, Phil. Are you pioneering? Okay, what we got for that one, Martin? Okay, someone's saying, what does pioneer mean? Do I tend to ground break? I will pick up on what's a pioneer in a minute, but I'd love to hear your answers to that in the chat. So are you pioneering? Yes, just about 90% of you pioneering, 11% no. Great, thank you. And then the fourth one, this is the last one for now. Is everyone a pioneer? Is everyone a pioneer? Yes or no? The reason I'm asking this question is that I get told this by quite a lot in the church when I'm trying to advocate for pioneers, that everyone's a pioneer, so we don't need to focus on pioneering. I mean, I cannot see how that is true when I look at the church, but there we go. So what do you think? Yes or no? Martin, how are we doing on that one? No. Okay, 88% of you, 12% think everyone is, which is fine. Okay, great stuff. So that's just to get us warmed up. So what I want to do just first off to dive in before we get into the theme in a bit is to think about what a pioneer is. What is a pioneer? And as I said, it's a slightly weird word. So I'd love you to post in the chat, and we'll come back to Catherine in a minute to see if she can pull out some of your suggestions. But I'll just share a few thoughts with you on what a pioneer is. Let me get this going. Yeah, so one of the things I really love is this little diagram, which I've used for years, which has someone standing outside a church saying, hey, come on in, and someone outside saying, no, you come on out. And one of the things I think about pioneering is that it's focused really on those outside of the church. It's not so much focused on trying to do church better, but how do we get out and connect in the community? So if you've got that instinct, that's one thing I think pioneering is about. Another is I've sort of noticed when we were interviewing people at CMS who were wanting to come and train with us, at some point in the interview, they would often say, to be honest, I've never fitted in. So I've come to think of pioneering, one way of describing it as the gift of not fitting in, like a little diagram there from the book. And sorry, I won't jump onto those. Yeah, oh, that's right. Yeah, and then in the book, I put 5 things that a pioneer is that were basically distilled out of answers to a question in the research I did. I suddenly realized that they could be grouped together in 5 ways. And these are the 5 kind of answers. Pioneering is finding a new way or path, which I like. I like all of these. Pioneering is seeing and imagining different possibilities. I mean, we'll pick up on that next time, but I definitely think it's a gift of sight. Starting and building stuff. It's definitely not just about seeing and imagining, but actually making things happen, building things. Pioneering is about responding to injustice to make a better world. And the 5th one, I think there was a guy, Nick, who answered this, Nick White. I really love this. Growing new forms of church where church isn't. So for quite a lot of people, it's starting new form of church, but relating to people who don't fit with the church where it's at the moment. So those 5 things that I've put on here: finding a new way or path, seeing and imagining different possibilities, starting and building stuff, responding to injustice to make a better world, growing new forms of church where church isn't. So I'm just going to crash out of this a minute and ask Catherine to pull out a few of the suggestions. Catherine, I can see there are loads scrolling down the screen. What's a few of the things that caught your attention in the chat?
Yeah, we've got somebody who said it's pie and ear, a piece of pie and a listening ear. I like that one.
Okay.
Stuff about being creative, seeing things differently, square peg in a round hole, mustard tree image. So I guess the way a mustard tree grows. We've got stuff around going on outside the church as well.
Yeah.
Picking up more here. Revolution more than evolution.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah, it's a good debate. That's a good one to take away and think about whether you prefer revolution or evolution. Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Catherine. Yeah.
Various people saying just seeing people, seeing differently, really. People who see things differently.
Yeah, and in the Church of England, certainly, and Methodist Church and others, the word pioneer really has come to be used in about the last 16 years since the church noticed lots of new things bubbling up at the edges in the church, and in the report Mission Shaped Church came up with the recommendation that we need to recognize that people starting things are bringing a different gift, and they use the word, well, 2 actually, pioneer minister and mission entrepreneur, so that it partly came from that too. So we'll do one more poll, which is to put up those 5 things on the poll. And this poll, you don't just have to pick one answer, you can pick as many answers as you like. But if you think about those 5 things, I wonder which you identify with most, or is it a combination? So I mean, if it was me, I'm definitely into seeing and imagining different possibilities, starting and building stuff. I think I'll probably tick all 5, but yeah, what about you? What ones are you drawn to? So yeah, have a go at the poll. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, I like that, Pete Armstrong. Missional innovators, that's a nice phrase, yeah. So we're just popping up on the chat.
And we had another one earlier on that I didn't mention, but Roger talking about being reaching people with Jesus in ways which are particularly appropriate to the audience and to the recipient. So I guess being contextual.
Dean Pusey, great to see you here. I haven't seen you for a while. We'll have to catch up soon. But yeah, great comment. Yeah, people are pioneers by their embodied difference. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's interesting. I'd love to talk to you about that. Okay, Martin, we got the results here. So Yeah, so the gift of sight is top. I mean, I really think it does begin there, and then the others are fairly evenly spread out. I mean, one of the things that's interesting there is that it's not like 90% on growing new forms of church, because I think, you know, in terms of Heartedge's 4Cs today, I'm particularly going to pick up on congregations. So we're going to talk about that at least a little bit today. But one of the things I've loved about CMS and the pioneers here, and the answers that you're coming up with here, is that it's not narrowly focused. You know, that pioneering can be many things and open up, join in with the healing of creation in lots of ways. So yeah, thanks everyone for taking part in that. Right, I mean, there are things called pioneering practice. What is practice? I always think the best way to find out about practice, which is the art of doing things, making it happen, is to learn from people who do it. So every week I'm going to have 3 guests, and we're going to find out about practice largely through them. So I'd like to introduce you to today's 3 guests, if I can. And oh, here we go. Yeah. So I guess welcome to you guys. Yeah, I can see you on screen now. That's great. Yeah, Pam Lawson, lovely to see you, Pam. Do you want to say hi and tell us where you are?
Hi, I'm in Cumbria, England.
Yeah, yeah, in TV. Great to have you with us. And Ash, good to see you. Where are you?
I'm inner city Birmingham. Winston Green is the neighbourhood I'm based in.
Yeah, fantastic. And Adam, good to see you. Where are you hailing from?
Hi, I'm in Shrewsbury in Shropshire, just on the English-Welsh border.
Okay, very good. Well, it's great to have you. Thanks for joining us this evening. And by way of, I'm going to interview you all, so we'll hear more about your pioneering then. So I don't want to interview you twice, as it were. But by way of a warm-up, who is a pioneer who has inspired you? If you have to think of a pioneer, who springs to mind for you? And other people, you're welcome to write in the chat. Who are pioneers who've inspired you? Who springs to mind? Adam.
I was just reaching to turn the screen a bit further. So who's a pioneer? I was struggling with this one because there are lots of people who've done different things that I really... Nelson Mandela was an amazing pioneer, actually.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's a good shout. That's a good shout.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Just start small.
Yeah, start the ball rolling. Ash, you've been named in the chat, yeah, by more than one person, so that's good. You're in the right place. How about you, Ash? Who's a pioneer?
My absolute favourite pioneer is Kagawa, who was a Japanese, or at least started the trade union movement, cooperatives, churches, helped rebuild Kobe after the 1930s big earthquake that destroyed the whole city. And so I love him, that he's, talk about thinking in new ways and finding new ways of being. He's my absolute favorite.
Right, Kagawa, nice one. Pam, how about you?
I found this a difficult one as well because there were so many, but I actually, I was thinking about Anne-Marie Wilson, that some of you may know, who works for CMS and who has done, does lots of amazing things, but she started a charity called 28 Too Many, which is fights against FGM. And I have a personal connection with her because she has relatives that live in my village. So I've got to know her a bit more. And she does a lot of local stuff too. So, yeah.
I always think in terms of kind of people who are inspiring, it's great to think of people like Nelson Mandela and whatever, who we, you know, they're kind of out there. But it's also great to think of people you know. I think both are really good. And Anne-Marie, I interviewed there's a conversation about change in the book, and yeah, she was very, very impressive. Yeah. So thanks everyone for putting ideas in that I can see floating down the panel there. Well, one of the things I really like actually in the chat is that I recognize so many names of people. So it's brilliant that people are seeing pioneers that they know who are inspiring. That's wonderful. Yeah, that they're, you know, what a gift we've got in society and in the church, I think. Great, thanks guys. Well, I'll interview you all, and as well as interviews, we're going to do a couple of exercises each evening. So I'll get you back for the first one in a bit, but Pam, I'll interview you first if that's all right. Even if it's not, I'll probably interview you. So yeah, thanks so much for coming, Pam. And I mean, you need to blame your husband Martin for suggesting you, because he emailed me and said you should have Pam as a panelist, and I thought, yeah, what a great idea. And yeah, part of the thing I really liked about that is that you're not employed full-time by the church or a charity or anything. You work as a teacher. And you're in T-Bay, which I've been and stayed with you, and it's, everyone knows it for the service station, of course, but behind it is where you are, and it's kind of a small village in Cumbria, isn't it? And I mean, I hope I won't get in trouble for saying this, but the church that you're part of is sort of bog standard rural church, really, isn't it? You know, it's very ordinary. Yeah. And then you know, you've pioneered a number of things there. So tell us about the things that you've got started. I mean, I think I know of 3 that you've done in the village there, but yeah, tell us about them.
Okay, so yeah, all of them, we've lived in this village for just over 5 years. And yeah, the church, there are two very small churches here with elderly congregations. And I have a full-time job. Well, I've just gone part-time, but full-time primary school teacher, which is a very demanding job. And yet, because I have a sort of real longing for people to connect with God in a way that's relevant to them, I very much felt when we moved here that the church was kind of disconnected from the community. In some ways, there is still a connect in traditional ways. It's quite a traditional community. But I just began to think about, well, what could we do a little bit differently, as well as going to what you just called bog standard church? What else can we do differently? And I'm actually a musician, and I like music, singing, playing piano, and I do that in worship. I do it in school. It's something I really enjoy. And the first year I was here, somebody asked me if I could do some music for a Christmas service. So a couple of kids who happened to be my neighbours wanted to play the flute and the clarinet in church. So we did. And then I pulled together a little band of children from the village. And they would turn up once a week to our place, and we'd just practice some music together. And then we wrote a couple of songs. We got the kids to come to church once a month to just play in the service, and their parents would come to church and be part of the service, and we'd try and do something a bit more accessible to people. And then we started inviting them to have breakfast as well on the Sunday before the service, and we kind of got to know people that way, which was just an easy way to get to know people through music. And that connected with quite a few kids, sort of primary school, middle school age, kind of 7 to 12 sort of age group, but it also connected us with families. So that was something that happened over COVID. It kind of stopped, but the connection with those families continued. And alongside that, I got going a group from 5 different churches in our village and the next village to work together to help host events for families, because there was nothing really going on with young people and children in the church. And so we started experimenting with different ways of doing things: social events, sports days, bake-offs, picnics with the story of the feeding of the 5,000, all sorts of things we tried. We went online over COVID, we did scavenger hunts, quizzes, and connected with these families and people beyond, and got people from different churches working together to kind of connect people outside of the church, or of the traditional church. So that's been really interesting and helped to bring a sense of connection, I think, into the village a bit more, even during COVID. And then I've just recently started something else with Martin's support, which we've called Wild Wanderings, which is basically, let's get together once a month, go for a walk, and meet up in a mutual place. Might be the church hall, it might be the social club, have a bit of food, chat about our reflections, and it's very, very low level. There's no kind of churchy input or anything. It's a space for discussion, really. And that's working with some of the friends and connections that I've made, and we're just seeing where that will go, really. So in a nutshell.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great outdoorsy stuff going on in lots of places as a way to connect, and that's obviously been good in the pandemic and so on. But I mean, the mountain pilgrims thing, I really love. But there's a whole series of outdoor things, aren't there, in Cumbria? But I mean, I guess it makes sense that people connecting with God in the outdoors. So that's terrific. Yeah, I mean, what I really love about what you've shared and are doing, Pam, is that the things that you're doing are just really ordinary. I mean, I don't mean that to be patronizing, but you're using music, connecting with families. I mean, there's a lot of energy and drive coming into it, pulling people together. But I think sometimes when people think about pioneer practice, they imagine the most entrepreneurial person they've ever heard of or know. They're over there and they think they're miles away from that. Yet you're just, I can't remember where I got this phrase. I think I stole it off someone else. I think of what you're doing as low-level innovation. We just need loads and loads of low-level innovation. I mean, I love the out there stuff too. We want that. But yeah, that's what I really love about that. I mean, Heart Edge have got this theme of congregation. I don't know if you see these things as congregation, but the question I had for you around that, I was thinking, if there are lots of things that are run by volunteers like this, often when a church has a congregation, it's really demanding. It meets every week, requires all sorts of things. So do you think we need a lot more congregations that are easier to run?
Well, maybe. I mean, I think part of it actually is working out how we can work with people who are not part of our congregations, people who are in our communities and can help us get alongside and say, well, I can bring food and I can do this, and taking the pressure off what we might call our congregation, so that it becomes more a way of sharing life together. And that opens up possibilities for connection way beyond any kind of congregation. And I think that's one of the things that we're learning.
Yeah, Catherine's just said in the chat, she loves what you're saying. She's in a rural place and everything you're saying sounds doable.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is doable. And I think connecting people from each of the churches that are connected together are very small. Yeah. But because we've got one or two people on our team from each church who have got a little bit of time, not a lot of time, and everybody brings different gifts, we've been able to do things that we couldn't have done on our own. And so even though we're working in two villages, T-Bay and Orton, the two villages are very different, but we wouldn't have been able to do it without the people from the other village because we wouldn't have enough capacity. But working together, we can pull that. And we're going beyond that now. We've run 3 community sports days now. And we've got people from the village involved who've we've worked alongside them and with them and done it with them, because we could never have done that on our own. When when you have 200 people turn up for a sports afternoon in your village, you can't run that with a congregation of 8 people. So so it's about teamwork and drawing out people's gifts and just connecting people and like we were saying, it's seeing what's possible and saying we could do this, we just need to find the right people to help us.
And also, I mean, I've stayed with you a few times. Whenever I come up to Cumbria, I seem to stay with you guys. But you've always got people in the house. There are always people passing through. You're feeding people breakfast. So it feels like it's a real hub. And I do think that food and hospitality is right at the heart of making connections in the community, out of which things grow in the way that you're doing. Thanks ever so much, Pam. That's absolutely brilliant. You're inspiring people with what we're calling low-level innovation, which sounds a bit patronizing, but it's really not meant to be at all. Right, we'll bring the other guys in to join us and do what I'm calling an exercise, but while they come in, I will just share screen for a minute on this. Yeah, so we'll get all the guys on the screen here, and as well as thinking about BU tonight, which I promise we will get onto, I thought this first week we kind of also want to think about how do you get something started. So if you're in a space and you're interested in new things, what's a good way to start? And these are three questions that I think are really great start points. And my suggestion is that you get down the pub or a local cafe with some people, or online, I suppose. But I think the pub's better. And talk about these. What's bugging you? What are you longing for? And what's possible? And for this kind of exercise conversation together, I'm simply going to ask these guys, they don't know which question I'm going to ask them, one of these questions, but I'd love for you to share in the chat as well, which I'm struggling to keep up with, but I will look at it later. Let's start with what's bugging you. Ash, what's bugging you?
I'm always a bit grumpy, Johnny, you know me. I think what's bugging me at the moment is just how urban people and places are just so underestimated. Number one, what's possible, the potential of the places like Winsangree where we live, the diversity, the dynamic kind of people that are living here, but also the challenge and what it actually takes to see change happen here. Just throwing some pounds at it and throwing some people at it for a couple of years and then kind of moving on. So what's bugging me, I think, is that it just keeps happening.
Yeah.
That what it takes to see real change happen in an urban neighborhood is a sense of call and going deep and learning the culture and language. It's a complex mission context. But it's a huge investment, but also huge rewards are possible. Yeah. And so I think the lack of courage, lack of resourcing that happens in places like ours, and we're just one of millions of urban neighborhoods around the world. I mean, in 1800, only 5% of the world lived in urban areas. Today, over 55% do, and by the middle of the century, 75% of people will. So that the world is just not, and the Christian world is not got to grips with the diversity, the disparity of rich and poor, and the kind of cultural challenges that are happening in neighborhoods. So,
and what I love about your what's bugging you is it sounds like your life's work is responding to what's bugging you. So you're proving my point that this is a great starting question.
Yeah, I've been pissed off for a long time, Johnny.
Yeah, exactly. So, Adam, let's go to you. What are you longing for?
What am I longing for? I'm longing for a kettle that's always full, because I'm always, through the working day, I always seem to be going back and just refilling the kettle. It's really annoying. So, what am I longing for? I'm longing for us to measure growth, not just in numbers, but actually in depth. You know, we're so obsessed with numbers, aren't we? We're obsessed with it in the church, we're obsessed with it, you know. And sometimes when I look at what I'm doing, it's very easy to get despondent because the numbers aren't necessarily huge, and we're not seeing revival in the classic car industry yet.
You're getting a lot of love in the chat for that one, and I think that's also related to visibility. So part of the challenge for pioneers is sometimes you don't even feel seen because the things that people are looking at normally, they don't notice the stuff. So yeah, it's a good one. Pam, jump into you. What's possible?
Well, we never quite know what's possible, do we, until we sort of try something. But I think my experience, a lot of it is just sort of saying, well, why can't I just do something that I can do and see what happens? And that is possible, you know, for all of us to sort of take the next step and having the confidence to just say, well, I'll just try something. And if something doesn't work, then it's okay. It's okay for something to try and fail. It's okay to push the boat, give something a go. And so I think we don't have to, it helps to have a big vision. And I do have a very big vision, but that goes way beyond my village. But what's possible? Well, it's possible for me to take the next step, you know, whatever it is, the next thing tomorrow, or the next connection that I make, the next conversation. Can I do something small? When the band finished with COVID, I'd found that quite difficult and demanding running, although I'm a musical, because I have such a busy job, I found it quite difficult doing all the parts and all of that for the different instruments. And then somebody moved into the village who wanted to start a brass band. in the village. I was like, great. So I'm now working with her and running a choir and leading kids singing. I could do that standing on my head. And so at Christmas, I said, well, look, I'll pull a kids choir together. You do the brass band. And we got together and we got about, with her sort of 6 and my 10 kids in a small village of 700 people. That's quite a lot of children. And we got some music together and did a Christingle service and everybody loved it. And it was just, for me, it was easy because I had the time to do it. It didn't take me long. And so I think at the sort of low level, it's about just doing what is possible and not trying to kind of make it into something massive that's too big, but it's just something that you can do because it fits with who you are and you're working with your gifting and with what's easy for you and what feels right for you, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, obviously I kind of wrote them, but I love all 3 of these questions. But I am amazed how much anger is out there around measurement. You've touched a nerve, I think, Adam, with that. But yeah, thanks, guys. I'll now I'm gonna just bring Catherine in and see what's bugging other people, and I think there's a few Q&As. So Catherine, yeah, do you want to jump in?
Yep, I don't know if you want me on video.
Oh, yeah, you're there.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm struggling to keep up with the questions because a lot of people are putting them in the chat rather than the Q&A. So, yeah, people are. Question for Pam about the wild wanderings. There, I'd love to know more about the wild wanderings discussion, whether it's purely organic. So I don't know whether you want to take individual questions there. And asking Pam about how she's navigated church hierarchy and people being threatened. So a couple of questions there specifically to Pam. Picking up in the chat, somebody's asked about, are we asking the basic question about why people aren't in church in the first place? And also there's been quite a lot of response to this idea of not only offering hospitality but also receiving hospitality and the mutuality of that, and the idea of doing things with others, being with others. So
okay, I'm going to chat to Ash next, so I'll pick up the hospitality question with Ash, I think, if that's all right. But Pam, do you want, there are a couple of questions there for you. One, it sounded like people were interested in the kind of conversation you're having in your wild wanderings. So is that a spiritual kind of conversation or just a polite chat, or how do you, I mean, you described it as low key, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of framework that we've taken is connect, reflect and act. And so what we've done, actually, we've produced just a kind of placemat. I think this is something we've used before. We took the idea of the title Wild Wanderings because actually we've advertised it as Wanderings with an A and then crossed out to be an O. So you've got Wanderings and Wanderings. And then we've got people to go on a walk and we've had silence for part of the time, just for literally five minutes or something like that. And then got people to chat about, just directed people's thoughts in a certain way. And then when they've got back, we've on these placemats, we just thought, what were you thinking about during that time? What did you connect with? Did you connect with nature in some way? Was there some sense of the spiritual for you? And we've got people to talk about that around their tables and reflect a little bit on that together. And then we've also then from that talked about action and action we can take in our village. Particularly, we've been focusing on the environment. So people are quite keen to engage with that. And we're in an early stage.
Sorry, time's whizzing, so that gives people a good flavour, I think. What was the second question for Pam, Catherine?
It was about navigating kind of church hierarchy.
Church hierarchy,
that's come up more generally, has been asked more generally as well.
Can I stall on that one, Pam, just because of time? Yeah. The fourth week is on change. And one of the themes we'll talk about is kind of navigating systems, which I think every pioneer encounters. So we won't pick that up now, if that's all right. But yeah, thanks everyone. Keep the questions coming and the chat and so on. And I'll have a chat with Ash next. if that's all right. So Ash, I don't know if we could begin with that. I mean, that is such a great mission question, isn't it? About hospitality, whether we're the hosts or the guests, and you're in a neighbourhood in Winson Green. I can't remember how long you've been there, but what's your reflection on hosting and guesting in that space?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to try and do both. I mean, I lived in Bangkok in a big slum community for 12 years, and obviously you were quite clearly the guest, trying to learn the language and culture, and not get dysentery and typhoid and typhus too much. Coming to inner city Birmingham, it's a complex culture to learn, and so you have to find insiders who can orientate you, and and that takes time. We initially moved and we bought a house in the neighborhood. We've been there 7 years now in Winson Green. Initially we rented a house, and then we bought a house in the neighborhood, and then eventually the vicarage hadn't been used for a long time, and we had a kind of eye on it, and so we were able to move into a bigger place, like it was 6 bedrooms. Hadn't been a vicar there for 10 years, I don't think. We did have to promise that we wouldn't plant a church if we rented the vicarage. That was kind of the deal with the archdeacon, that we wouldn't start any new congregations because they knew our background in other places. But then, so we were able to show a whole lot more hospitality. We just had a bigger house. So at one point we were having 300 people a week through our house with alpacas. We had all kinds of things to try and make connections with people.
And out of interest, how many congregations have you started since being banned from starting a church?
Yeah, 2. But we renegotiated 4 years in because we just started taking people into Gas Street Church, busloads of people, because they were coming to faith. They wouldn't relate to the grumpy kind of local church. And so eventually it was crazy. Look, we've got all these people coming to faith. They want to know about Jesus. Why do we have to drive them into the city centre church? Why can't we do it ourselves as a fresh expression? And eventually we were allowed to do that. And we eventually got so big for a house, we got a yurt out the front.
Yeah.
And then eventually the local URC church, there was only about 5 or 6 people for there as well. And we've taken over that for the second congregation. So we have a kind of fresh expression in the afternoon, and we have a morning kind of family service that we've taken over this massive derelict URC building where I'm in at the moment.
Yeah, and I visited you there quite recently. I can't remember when it was. Just before Christmas, wasn't it? But I mean, that really is battered, bits of roof falling in and so on. But you started a community cafe. There's an art studio. You're sort of giving debt advice to people. It just felt like people are coming through there all the time, and it seemed like a real kind of hub in the community. And there's a congregation there. I mean, I think the question that interested me in relation to congregation, which is I'm trying to touch on this evening, is that it does feel like the church is, obsessed maybe with new worshipping communities and congregations. And I kind of get that. They're good. We want disciples and so on. But it feels to me, from my knowing of you, that you're obsessed with transforming the neighbourhood, and congregations seem to be part of that. And that somehow feels better or healthier to me. So how do you see this relationship between congregation and transforming the neighbourhood?
Yeah, I mean, Leslie Newbigin's definition of a church. So we actually are in Leslie Newbigin's old parish. Yeah. His famous book, Gospel and Pluralist Society, Foolishness to the Greeks. So he did a lot of his work in the West after being in India in this particular neighborhood. And he said the role of the church is to be a sign, a foretaste, and an instrument of God's coming kingdom in a place. And so if you think of the church as the people of God rather than a service, number one, I think that's really important.
Yeah, good idea.
But number two, if you think about what we're trying to be a sign of hope. We're trying to be the people who can help instigate change and transformation. And so really, and what we've been trying to do in Bangkok and Australia before that was raise up local leaders, and that we wouldn't start any congregations until the local people come to faith and can express faith in ways that are indigenous to them. And so our first church planting in Melbourne was that came out of an AA 12-step kind of group. And the church felt like an AA group. You know, you literally kind of said, hi, I'm Ash and I'm a Christian, you know, hi, Ash, you know. And so it was natural. And so we help people to love and obey Jesus. We talk about the 7 basic commands of Jesus and help people to do that. And after a while, things like communion and baptism and those kind of things, as well as love and prayer and giving and sharing life and hospitality together, all the basic things Jesus command, we have to do that, to find a way to do that together. But by local people deciding how that form will look is very different than just trying to start a service and trying to get people to come to it. Most of our projects here are built the same way. What are the gifts and passions and talents of people? I love bike riding. So we've got a whole lot of bikes now that people have been learning how to fix up, and they go on bike rides together. I love football. So we started a football club. We had 1,000 kids show up for our first football tryout with West Bromwich Albion. And so our churches work the same way. They start with people and passion and needs, and then it kind of grows, and sometimes they're congregations. But if we never started a congregation, and people were loving the local churches that were already here, that would have been fine too. We wouldn't have been stressed by that, particularly if those churches could be a sign, a foretaste, an instrument of God's coming kingdom in a place. So our sense of call in Clontoy, in Springvale, and now Winson Green is to the place, and we'll stay here. And we'll work hard and work with what God's got here to see that change happen, and hopefully congregations can be part of that.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. Sorry, time is whizzing on. I mean, I've been to visit you loads of times, and I bring Pioneer students to visit you because I find what you're doing so embedded in the neighbourhood, so inspiring. Love what you do. So thanks so much for joining us today. And I do encourage people to check out Seedbeds and go visit Ash and Ange and all the stuff that's happening there. It's great. Right, I'll bring everyone else back in for our second kind of thing. Oh, actually, sorry, no, not quite yet. I've got another. I'm just going to jump to talk about the theme briefly. I gather there are questions coming in the chat galore, which I'm not going to be able to answer them all. One of the questions coming in, I think, is about why the panel's all white. I did actually try and get it different this week and failed, but next week I've got Syrian and someone from Indian background, so it won't be white every week, rest assured. And I think the question around pioneering and colonialism, or what's post-colonial mission, is a great question that we're forever talking about at CMS these days. And we're not going to be able to answer that question today, but I think the sensibilities around that and being with people rather than imposing and so on is really important. So thank you for those questions. Yeah, let me just play you for each week. John, who did the design of the books, done a little animation on the theme. It's only about a minute long, so we'll play you the animation on the theme of BU.
You are unique, a gift. Your life story so far has shaped you in amazing ways, both the good and bad parts. It's easy to think that being a pioneer is about being like someone else who you look up to and can see is amazing at pioneering. But you are not called to be someone else, so don't do comparison. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks you should be or do either. Your life's work is to be you and become more fully you, to come home to yourself. You have your own blend of frustrations, talents and passion. Unfurl to heal the world out of those. Like the rest of us, you have struggles to deal with and need healing. Welcome to the human race. So do some soul work and learn to look after yourself as well.
Sweet, huh? Love that. Yeah, I mean, one of the big learnings for me through training pioneers at CMS, and this wasn't something that I thought I would think at the start, was that actually we began to realise after a while that pioneering, or any kind of ministry or mission, goes best not when you try and be someone else, but when you're able to do that out of a way that fits with the gift of who you are, the person that God has made you to be. So that's really tonight's theme, and it's perhaps not as easy as it sounds. Let me just share. I'm going to, just share a little exercise we're going to talk about. Sorry, let me just jump through these slides. Oh yeah, we've had that. Yeah, so this is an exercise that I've asked the guests to do, that I think in a sense of thinking about what you might be about, what's a good connect for you in terms of who you are. I picked up this exercise from a group in Denmark called Chaos Pilots, and the suggestion that they have is this: that what are you dissatisfied with, or I mean, it relates to the question earlier, what's bugging you or what makes you angry, and that you write, say, 8 to 10 things, something like that, on that. What are you passionate about? Write 8 to 10 things on that, and what do you have a talent for? What are you gifted at? And then try and distill each of those down to a phrase or a word or an idea, and then weave them together into a sentence. Now, when I first came across this, we did this in our family, and in the book, actually, I share all of the family's responses to what we came up with, and we were amazed how they seemed to describe what we were about. So, for example, my son Joel, who's now runs a graphic design company, he wrote this back then: I like creating things that capture niche zeitgeists and do so quietly so that they may resonate louder. I mean, that really is him. When I did this one time, sorry, this is my bit of paper I was scribbling on, I came up with: I connect with and encourage those who have the gift of not fitting in to creatively share that gift in a world and church that wants them to stay in their box. So that was the one I came up with at the time. But it's quite a simple exercise, but I really encourage you to try it out, have a go at it. Yeah, there we go, stop sharing. But I've asked the 3 guests to do this and see what they come up with. So Ash, Adam and Pam, Martin, if you can land them back in, let's hear what you guys have come up with on this. So who'd like to go first? Adam.
Why me? Yeah.
Well, you said earlier when we were talking that your family had come up for other suggestions.
Yes, I think under the dissatisfaction, I think the one was when you get served crumble without custard. That was one of my dissatisfactions. It's just like a big no-no as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so I came up with this. I'm someone who loves stories of restoration and creating images and opportunities through which people can encounter a faith that restores.
Okay, say it again.
So I'm someone who loves stories of restoration and creating images and opportunities through which people can encounter a faith that restores.
Great. I can see a good fit with what you're doing. That's great. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Pam?
Okay, this is what I came up with. I am a bridge builder who is passionate about making a difference both locally and globally in order to help build a more just world.
Brilliant. And how did you feel about that when you came up with it? Does that feel like you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's something about music in there, but I didn't manage to get that in. It kind of...
Maybe you should sing the statement. Ash, how about you?
Yeah, I got I connect, grow, and release urban people and places into God's promised shalom. So the connect, grow, release is the talent kind of bit. I love connecting people and empowering, growing, developing, releasing people. I don't like running things forever myself, so it's releasing bit that's important. I talked about urban people and places and my frustrations there before. And then God's promise shalom. I like the idea of God, people and place being in harmony together as an image of what we're trying to see happen here. And so that's why we can join in with existing things, why we can start things as well. It's all kind of working towards that promise of Isaiah 65 and other kind of passages are really important.
Yeah,
So,
I love all three of those. I mean, like when we did it, we were amazed, I think, how that simple exercise felt like it could really get to something. So I encourage other people to have a go at that. If you guys are happy to, would you email me yours and then I'll send them round to people? But if that's too embarrassing, then don't feel that you have to. I persuaded my whole family to let me put theirs in the book, which they may be regretting, I don't know. Yeah, and other people, if you have a go at that, I'd love to. In fact, I'd love to see if anyone wants to send in what you come up with, but don't feel any pressure to do so. Yeah, that's terrific. I mean, obviously there are loads of ways of reflecting on the gift of who you are, and some of us really struggle with the idea that we might be a gift. We don't feel we've got worth and so on. So that what sounds simple in terms of being you, coming home to yourself, can be a pretty difficult journey for us, I think. So I don't want to just make it trite with a sort of little exercise to come up with it. But in some ways, I do think it's our life's work to come home to the person that God has made and called us to be. So anyway, that's one of our big learnings through the Pioneer training. Thanks, guys. So I'll have a chat, Adam, with you now, if that's all right. So part of who you are, Adam, is that you love cars. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I'll probably try and do it very briefly because I could go on for ages, as my wife would say. Yeah, no, I've always loved cars. I don't know what it was initially that got me into them, but I've just loved the look of them, the feel, the noise, everything, you know. And I think I grew up, my dad was a vicar, so I grew up in a church family. And I grew up with that whole kind of thing of cars were seen as kind of materialistic and, you know, if I wanted to do God's will, that meant going off and doing something I didn't want to do. You know, so I only, and I think, like you say, I think my life story has been kind of coming home for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you also you went and trained to get ordained. You had passion for, I don't know, mission ministry. I don't know how you would say it as well. But I mean, we've talked about this a bit. I know that you ended up feeling a bit disconnected from who you were through that training and trying to reconnect. I mean, can you tell us a bit, and how did that join back up again with cars?
Yeah, there was a sense of you know, I'd worked in the car industry. I was a designer, worked both in the UK and abroad, doing design concepts for people like Rolls-Royce and other people. And then there suddenly seemed to be this very definite cutoff of kind of going to theological college and suddenly being faced with theology essays. And it wasn't that I didn't know that was, you know, part of the course, but it just, I went through this kind of real grief reaction about leaving this kind of former life where I'd been in design teams and, you know, I've been creating things. And suddenly there was a sense where as soon as you kind of crossed the threshold of the theological college, all that was done and dusted. And to me, that just didn't feel finished. And I had a really good tutor who said to me that, you know, she believed that God didn't do waste, that the stuff that I'd done before wasn't wasted, it wasn't necessarily over. And actually what I ended up doing is I ended up picking out a book in the library, which ended up being Shaping of Things to Come by Alan Hirsch and Michael Frost. And it just blew me away because I suddenly saw the two worlds that seemed disconnected being encouraged to fit back together again, and what Frost and Hirsch were writing and the challenge that they were giving the established church just really kind of struck a chord in me. And I came out of that thinking, right, actually I need to rethink, and maybe my calling is about going out, not coming in.
Yeah, and fast forward a bit, you've set up a thing called Revs, which is such a genius name, I have to say. Which is a sort of faith community, I think, for people exploring or interested in faith and love cars. And there's, I think, a few of them, and you've run big online community and whatever. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about Revs. I mean, the story is in the book. So people into it more. Yeah, give us a flavour.
Yeah. So Revs, the idea is we have what we call our cars and coffee groups, which are small groups that meet in various locations across the Midlands. But we are looking at increasing those. We're trying to get one set up in the north of it, well, two set up in the north of England. And these are places where people can just come, they can have coffee, bacon sarnie, or vegetarian equivalent. They can just talk about cars, bring their cars, but actually there's the invitation to kind of go to a deeper level, to talk about how their life is going at the moment, how things are happening. Obviously with things like isolation and COVID, that kind of scotched those groups a bit for a while.
Sure.
So we went online and we grew what turned out to be an online community that just exploded. And we now have over 7,000 people who are members of our online community. But we try and build in cars, but we also talk about issues of life, and I then weave faith into that. And one of the big things we're doing is mental health.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've been very open and transparent about struggles with mental health, which I think's brave and been terrific. But I mean, part of this notion of being you is dealing, I mean, CMS, we call it soul work, that you got to pay attention to the stuff in your own life that's challenging, look after yourself and so on. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that. What's that's been like for you?
So I kind of have a background of anxiety and depression and OCD. And I just thought, well, actually, if I'm encouraging people to be real and honest, and I'm talking about a faith which connects with the most vulnerable elements of who we are, and I kind of need to model it, really. So I've been kind of just very honest and open. But we found that since lockdown particularly, we've had lots of conversations, both in our small groups, but also online, about mental health and the struggles that people have been having. We are really excited because we are at the moment trying to buy what we call a project vehicle, a car to restore, that we're going to then encourage people to come and spend a weekend helping us work on the car, but use that as a way of talking about mental health, sharing support for each other.
Terrific. Yeah. And I can see how that fits with that purpose statement too, that restoration. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, time's whizzing by. Just the last thing, I mean, this is effectively my plug for the CMS side of things, but well, it might be, it depends what you say, but you trained with us at CMS. So do you want to just tell people in 30 seconds about training, be it for pioneering, what that was like?
I mean, I loved it. What I loved about it was the networking and the stories and the people that I was meeting. And I didn't necessarily go into it to get a qualification as such, but what I came out with were a whole network of people, some inspiring stories, and people coming in and doing lectures that were just kind of some of the things that I was really asking about at the time, and it felt like coming home and a safe place to ask those questions.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Adam. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to have to move us on because of time. Catherine, do you want to come in and just maybe pick a few questions? We're not good. Oh yeah, Natalie's asking whether we can have a link to Revs. What I'll do after each session, or what we'll do, I should say, is we'll send an email following every week with links to the various things that have been mentioned and so on, and I'll find a link to Revs if there is one and send it to you. Adam, send me a link. Yeah, I mean, you can post one in the chat in a minute as well. But yeah, Catherine, do you want to jump in and pick up anything from the panel or Q&A? I can see in the Q&A there are 14 questions. We're not going to finish by 9:10 if we do that, but give us one or two.
Well, I think I can probably group a couple together. There are questions which have come up here and in the Q&A and in the chat about the sort of balance between, I think, evangelism and pioneering, and then the sort of being with, do we have other criteria to measure on, sort of justice, transformation, the kind of, is it kind of all of that? I suppose it's, there might be tensions within that. So I don't know if you've got any quite general comments on that. I think that's just quite a broad question. And also a question that came out about financing. Do people who are joining pioneer communities kind of, are they thinking about giving in ways which might then be supporting training of ministers and so on? So I don't know if there's something to say about that. Those are kind of quite wide open questions.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay, yeah, jump in on the first one. I mean, this is the challenge of the word pioneer, I think. And yeah, so on. But in terms of thinking about mission, I mean, my sense of mission, but I think, drawing on a lot of other people as well, would be that it's about shalom that Ash was talking about, or I love the phrase creation healed, the kingdom of God coming on earth as in heaven. It's about everything. It's not just about evangelism at all. And I think it's good news for the whole creation. God's mission is setting the world free from its bondage to decay. So sharing the Jesus story is part of sharing that good news. But how we do that, particularly when we've been dominant, I think in terms of world vision, the world, and particularly the Western colonial thing, it's not our place to go and tell people what to do and think. It's listening, it's partnership, it's mutuality, and so on. So there's loads that you could say about that, but certainly don't hear what we're talking about as some kind of going and whatever. And I think a lot of the pioneers, certainly that have trained with us and we've been learning as we've been doing, they tend to go and live in a community and just get involved and participate. And in the way that Ash was talking about, things grow, people get involved and they're involved in life together, and a community emerges out of that, and that often takes a few years. So it's really not a kind of old school evangelism thing. I mean, on the resourcing side, I think that's a really great question. It's always a challenge. How do you resource things? The third webinar we're going to do on the theme of build, partly, again, this is part of the reason I wanted to do this project, was I think certainly when people train for ministry and so on, they do loads on theology and other things, but actually talking about money and resourcing and how you build things is not part of that conversation. And there are many, many ways to resource things. So we will pick up that conversation a bit in week 3, but it's a great question. So yeah, thank you for those. Our time's pretty much out, so let me just close out with a couple of plug type things here. So I've set up if you're interested in getting the book Pioneer Practice, we've set up a discount code, which is CMS Heart Edge. So if you go to getsidetracked.co, you can get it for £10 with that code. We'll send that to you in an email as well. Secondly, Heart Edge. Catherine, you said something about this before. Did you want to say anything else?
Well, I just encourage people to have a look at the website, heartedge.org. People can join Heart Edge as an individual, as a church. You don't have to pay, and it's just really a way for people to be connecting and sharing their learning and their insights, particularly around those 4 C's. And interestingly, the commerce side of this does kind of address the question of resourcing, financial resourcing of what church is doing.
Yeah, and the monthly email you guys send out is great, so sign up for that. Yeah. And then if the Pioneer training stuff, again, we'll send you a link to this. This is the website. If you Google CMS Pioneer Training, you'll find that website. So yeah, there it is. Sorry, that's the website there. So a few plugs for you. Thanks everyone for coming. Next time, the theme is C, which I love that theme. I love imagination, ideas, and so on. I have 3 different guests next time, and we're going to connect with the Heart Edge theme of compassion in terms of seeing. And we will be sending you an email. Not quite sure when, you may get it tomorrow, maybe Monday, but we will send a follow-up email with links and so on. And we will send you a link to the video. So for people who've missed it, they'll be able to catch up that way. Thanks ever so much for coming. I mean, it's so heartwarming to think that 200 people or whatever it is have shown up, want to come out and talk and think about pioneering and joining in the healing of God's world. Love you guys. Yeah, hopefully see you next time. Every week there'll be an outro sequence of slides with a bit of music. You're welcome to disappear, of course, but that'll also be on theme each time. So yeah, see you next time. Thanks ever so much to Ash, Pam and Adam. Really appreciate you guys. And thanks Catherine, thanks Martin behind the scenes, and Joe behind the scenes too. Yeah, see you next time. Is that music?